Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidyadravindam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. So let's practice our Vedic chant, our Shanti mantra one more time. And for the Westerners who have the transliteration, let me help you with something. On the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th line down, where it says Prahasir Anena, change that to Prahasihi. You got that? Mm-hmm. Prahasihi, then take a breath. Anena. That's the way they do it on the chant. Just to explain what it is, we have rules in Sanskrit called Sandhi, which are rules of euphonic combination. And when the Visarga, which is the Sihi, butts up against a vowel, if you're going to write it or chant it on through, that H sound turns to an R sound. But the guy who's teaching us to chant it is splitting the Sandhi. So that will make it a lot easier. Get to our chant.
Playing from iPhone.
Mano me vati pratisthikam. Mano me vati pratisthikam. Aviravir mahedhi. Aviravir mahedhi. Vedasya manistaha. Vedasya manistaha. Shutam me mahasi. Shutam me mahasi. Anena hidena. Anena hidena. Ahoratram sandakami. Ahoratram sandakami. Vritam vadishyami. Vritam vadishyami. Satyam vagishyami. Satyam vagishyami. Dhamma bhavatu. Dhamma bhavatu. Tadvaktaramavatu. Tadvaktaramavatu. Avatu ma. Avatu ma. Avatu bhaktaramavatu bhaktaram. Avatu bhaktaramavatu bhaktaram.
Shanti, shanti, shanti.
Om
Shanti,
Shanti,
Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om.
Okay, it's a good place to stop. We're doing better. Next week, I'll try leading it, and then you respond line by line. And then after that, we'll just chant it all the way on through. So, Mark, where are we in our text?
We're in chapter 1, section 2, mantra 1.
Do you have that, Mully?
Mantra 1. Is this page 43 for anyone with the book?
Page 73.
73.
Page 73.
Okay. Oh. Section 2, right?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. All right. Ta eta devata shrishta asmin mahatyarnave pratam tam asanaya pipasabhyam anvavartraj ta enam abhruvan ayatanam na prajanati prajanihi yasmin pratistita anam adameti. The devatas, deities, so created, fell headlong into the great restless sea of change and finitude. Then he subjected them to hunger and thirst. They said to him, "Find us an abode wherein we may be established and may eat food," in brackets, may earn our experiences.
So we have here this, again, this is all mystic symbolism. And what we're alluding to again is, what is it that seems to cause all of life to do its thing? Here he's using the metaphors of hunger and thirst. This means desire. I have a need and I want to fulfill that need. So, with that idea in mind, let's parse it phrase by phrase. So, Molly, would you read the first phrase again in English?
Yes, these devatas or deities so created.
So, in the scriptures, the exoteric meaning of the devas are the various gods. Last night we did our puja, so we had Ram and Sita, we had Lakshmi, we had Ganesh, we had Hanuman. These are various devas. The Vedic devas are older: Indra, Agni, Vayu, Varuna. So, how do we want to look at those in terms of our practice? The devas or devatas are the presiding principles over fields of human endeavor. The closest modern English word we have to this, we actually borrow from the Greek, the muse. So a poet has a poem come through. Oh, the muse was with me. Or someone writes a song. Oh, the muse is with that person. It's the presiding principle over a field of human endeavor. So, for example, Wendy, she propitiates the cooking god. David had several gods. He did the medicine god, and now you're doing the research god. Is that what you're doing?
Yes.
Yeah. So the presiding principle. The second meaning that happens, and I think this is the one that this particular mantra is alluding to, is the sense organs. Now, in yoga, we don't have just 5 sense organs. In the West, we think eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. In yoga, we've got 10. They are divided into 2 groups. We have the Jnanendriyas, organs of knowledge, sometimes also called Buddhendriyas, which are in fact eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. This is information in. This is data in. The second group is hands, feet, tongue, anus, and genitalia, which is energy out. How we act in the world. So what happens is information comes in, it's digested, food by the mind, which then impels us into the world to act with our hands, feet, tongue, anus, and genitals, because we are hungry and thirsty for experience. This is what makes the world go round and round. Any thoughts on this? All right, next idea, please, Molly.
Sure. Fell headlong into the great restless sea of change and finitude.
So these devas, they have a subtle ideal form, but they fall into this whole progression. We've talked about how the whole world has come about through metaphor. We've been talking it. Now these devatas move into the world of name and form, the Jagat. We call it the Jagat because it goes Jaga, 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 Jaga. It's always changing. So our 10 sense organs, the devas, fall into the world of name and form. Now, why does he call this falling? Because this is the stuff that binds us.
Now connected to iPhone.
Alexa, disconnect from iPhone.
Now disconnected from iPhone.
So let's talk a little bit about how our sensory interaction with the world can bind us. So the first thing that happens when the sense organs of knowledge make contact with the world of name and form, they leave an impression. This is not inherently bad. It's how we know what's going on in the world. So can you see that this is a lamp?
Yes.
That doesn't cause you to suffer knowing this is a lamp. How do you know it's a lamp? You've been taught that it's a lamp. Do you see that this is a chair?
Yes.
Same thing. You know it's a chair. Someone taught you it was a chair, an impression. But there's a subset of sanskara called vasana. A vasana is a particular kind of impression. It's an impression that is left in the unconscious. We don't even know we have them deliberately or consciously, as the result of a previously performed egoistic action. What do I mean by an egoistic action? I move through the world, have an experience. After the experience, I engage in what is called chintya. Now, correct me, Molly, I think in Hindi, doesn't chintya mean worry?
Yes.
In Sanskrit, it means after the fact recollection and rumination over an event. It's not always negative. So those of us who were at the party last night, did you have some of Santosha's chole?
Yes.
That was really good. So he made chole for me some time ago. And then before the party, Santosh, are you going to make chole tonight? Make chole. Vasana, an impression wherein after the fact I decide this is joy giving, or the opposite, misery producing. And that then dwells in the unconscious. Now, a vasana has two powers. Shankara will use the metaphor that these vasanas are like the silk spun by a silkworm. So the silkworm's just moving along and it decides it's going to make a cocoon. So it spins one thread of silk and another thread of silk and another thread of silk. And after some time, after perhaps millions of threads of silk, the silkworm is cocooned in its silk. So one little vasana, probably not a problem, but you and I do nothing about it. And we have millions of these vasanas, which we have accrued through lifetimes, that cocoon the mind. They do not touch the self. But this cocoon has two properties. First, veiling power. Technical term is avriti or avarana shakti, meaning it clouds or covers my direct apprehension of my essential nature, my awareness of what the world is. I do not know who I am. The second power is what we call agitating or projecting power. It's called vikshepa shakti. The root is kshipati, which means to throw or hurl like a spear. The mind goes out into the world of name and form with hunger and thirst, meaning I want. I'm restless. I'm discontent. There's not enough. Only takes two forms. I either want to fix or change the world, or I want to fix or change me. That's it. This vikshepa shakti. And one of the things it creates is a personal sense of self, this ahankara. So I do not know I am Brahman. Veiling power comes down, and then Vikshepa Shakti. I think I'm a person. I think I'm Jim, or David, or Wendy, or Mark. And simultaneously with that is the hunger and the thirst, the restlessness, the discontent, the fear. We were talking about fear the other day. It's all Vikshepa Shakti. And its root is ignorance. So these devas, these devatas, they are thrown downward, here meeting into the grossified world of name and form. Next idea, please, Molly.
Yes, of course. Then he subjected them to hunger and thirst.
So we've talked about that. So the essence of it is I want. The word in Sanskrit is kama, most frequently translated as desire. Personally, I don't think that's a strong enough English word. I prefer to translate it as craving. Kama always has the quality of insistence. Let me see if I can give an example. Well, you all get the idea. We have preferences in the world. You want to have this dish of food rather than that one, but in the end, it's not a big deal.
If it becomes a big deal, then it's a craving.
Say again louder.
If it becomes a big deal, then it's a craving.
Yes, yes. And some just start off as big deals. Like, for example, if a child is sick, that's a big deal. Or if the stock market crashes, that's a big deal for a lot of people. But that's kama. That's the hunger and the thirst. The fruit of vasana. The result of spiritual ignorance. So that's this descent into the world of samsara, we call it, the ocean of change. Next idea.
They said to him, "Find for us an abode wherein we may be established and may eat food," which
Yes.
is may earn our experiences.
Yes. So first, these senses occur in a subtle form, in a subtle body. What's the difference between subtle and gross? It's vibrational. Best way I can explain it is the low notes on the piano are gross, the high notes on the piano are subtle. What's the difference? Vibration. Ice is grosser than water. Water is grosser than steam. Steam is subtler than water. Water is subtler than ice. So here, what happens in this descent of a human being? We need an abode. So it comes to the physical body. What is the physical body? First and foremost, it's not you. The physical body is a vehicle for the satisfaction of desire and the garnering of experience. It's how I think I'm going to be able to deal with the hunger and thirst, the karma, the craving. Now, sometimes it's very interesting. I take up a particular lifetime out of regret. True story. Many years ago, this is after I had lost my sight. I cannot take care of my own toes because I haven't seen them in 24 years. So I go up to a nail shop and I get my mani-pedi. And there was this young gal, and she had the little thing they use to squish at your cuticles. She was working on the big toe of my right foot, and she just stabbed me really hard by accident. And went, oh, it's bleeding. She was horrified. So she looked up and took the implement and stabbed herself. I'm not making this up.
Wow.
That somehow, if she hurt herself, that would atone for the fact that she had hurt me. How many times have you or I left a situation where we go, why did I do that? I'm such an idiot. Wow, I'm just the most horrible person in the world. I will never learn. Who's ever done that? It's no different. It's no different. Take that to a whole lifetime. You choose to come in with a deformity or have a disability in the middle of some lifetime. There's no God punishing us. But these are the kinds of choices we make. So it's not only for the satisfaction of desire, but it's the garnering of experience. Frequently, it can be something like this. If I have been unconscious in the way I have treated other people, let's say in a particular lifetime, I was a feudal lord, say in England or France, in the 14th century. I had serfs. And I just could care less about them. I may choose to come back impoverished. So I get to experience that from the other side. End result is I develop maybe a little bit of compassion. You see. So this whole thing about how we choose a life, very subtle. Very subtle. There are no accidents. We don't always get what we want. Listen carefully. We also don't always get what we need. We get the inevitable results, the fruits of our prior actions, choices we make. Any thoughts on this?
When you say we, what is the we that is choosing this?
The individual minds, the antakarana, the inner equipment. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Not the self.
Right.
Not the self. Self just watches.
And again, you could use that not even to talk about past lives, but this lifetime.
Oh, yeah.
right? When we have been, not cared, been cruel.
I have a very dear friend who was raised in poverty by a single mom. She was a little wackadoodle, but there were times when they had no electricity, no indoor plumbing. I mean, kids would make fun of him when he went to school because he smelled, because they had no way to bathe. Today, he's a very, very successful IT architect. I think that's the term. This is like up the ladder of being a computer programmer. He makes about $700,000 a year. He makes good living.
Mhm.
But what he does now is he invests in real estate in the Midwest, largely in Chicago and in Indiana. And he'll buy some building for like $10,000 that's a wreck in a depressed neighborhood. And then he'll put $150,000 into it to make a high class, really good apartment or house. And then he rents to Section 8 people. He chooses to provide dignified housing for poor people. With all that comes about that. I mean, he's gotten all sorts of awards for what he's done in some of these communities. Why does he do it? Because he has the empathy. He knows what it's like to live in poverty. So these vasanas are not always negative, and they can be subtle. But the one thing we want to know is, in a sense, there's no God out there punishing us. All right. So this whole idea of being thrown into the sea of change because of the vasanas that we accrue, we come into this world to satisfy desire and to garner experience. The next idea, please, Molly.
That is the end of it.
All right. Any questions on this mantra? Very, very rich. Next one, please.
Tabhyo Gamanayatam Abruvana Vaino Yamalamiti. Tabhyo Shwamanayatam Abruvana Vaino Yamalamiti. He brought the form of a cow for them. They said, "Indeed, this is not sufficient for us." He brought a horse to them. They said, "This is not sufficient for us."
So now, again, in the language of metaphor, we're talking about the whole idea of the evolution of the soul, this antakarana, this sukshma sharira. You don't need to believe this, it's not essential. But the idea here is that we evolve through lower life forms into more sophisticated life forms. Now, the Vedas posit that the crown and summit of existence of beings on the earth is human beings. Personally, I'm not so sure. I think maybe elephants or cetaceans may be a little better off. What's going on in outer space? I haven't the faintest idea. But the idea here is we may start off as a lizard, and after you've been an alligator or a monitor lizard, you may get into the mammalian kingdom. may evolve from a rat or a mouse up to being a cow, in the next lifetime, a horse. Pretty cool animals. Here, the desire to experience and express. Remember, energy in, jnanendriyas. Excuse me, knowledge in, jnanendriyas. Energy out, karmendriyas. So these lower animals are not sufficient. This hunger and thirst keeps impelling us into higher and higher forms of life. So let's see what happens. Next verse, please, Molly.
Yes. Tabya Purusham Anayatam Abhruvan Sukradam Bateti Purusho Vava Sukram Ta Abravidyatanam Pravisha Teti. When he brought the form of a man to them, they cried, "Oh, well done, oh, well done indeed. Man alone is the masterpiece. Verily, a man is a thing well done." He said to them, "Enter into your respective abodes."
Now we get a parallel of all this. If you go back to Genesis in the Hebrew scriptures, when God creates the world, again, this is all poetry. Starts with just light itself, and then he separates it into day and night, and then he starts creating various animals and grains and stuff like that. And what's the last thing that God creates? A human being on the sixth day. Gives that human being a whole lot of powers. One of the ones that I think is very cool. He gives human beings the power to name things. The naming of things is how we identify the suchness or thatness. How we identify the thing is what it is. Very similar here. So, what abode allows the maximum expression for these 10 devatas, 5 organs of action, 5 organs of knowledge? It's the human being. Now, the word he uses here is not manusya. Manusya means a human being, a man. He uses the word purusha. Purusha is a really old word. So those of us who are aware of the Vedas, in the Rig Veda, which many people think is the oldest book in the world, one of the oldest hymns in it is the Purusha Suktam, the hymn to the universal person. It's got depths of meaning. Purusha later on will come to mean the individual self. When we study Yoga Sutra, the commentator on it is called Vyasa, but it's not the original Vyasa. Patanjali, the guy who wrote it, it's Sankhya philosophy. We'll say that there's all these little individual Purushas. And there's God who's a Mahapurusha, super person. Sometimes it means the infinite self. It has various meanings at different times in history. But its original meaning is just person. Person. What is it that makes you a person? That's a really good question. Whole chapter on that in Gita. Purushottama Yoga. Uttama Purusha. What is the ultimate essence of being a person? Deal with that later. Right now, here, these devatas, sense perceptions, the sense organs, find their greatest fulfillment and expression in the abode of a human being. So, for example, a horse doesn't have much of a sense of being able to have speech. A cow can't talk. That would be utterly ridiculous. Next month from Ollie.
Okay, so this was a bit of a long one, the mantra itself, but we shall
We're
start.
patient. Help, do your best.
Okay. Agnirvag bhutva mukham pravishat vayu prano bhutva nasike pravisat adityas chakshur bhutvakshini pravisat disha strotram bhutva karnao pravishan aushadi vanaspatayo lomani bhutva tvacham pravishan chandrama mano bhutva hridayam pravishan mrityu apano bhutva nabhin pravisat aporeto bhutva shishnam pravishan. The fire, having turned into speech, entered the mouth. Air, having scent, entered the nostrils. The sun, having become the sight, entered the eyes. The quarters, having become the hearing, entered the ears. The deities of the herbs and the trees have become hair, entered the skin, the moon. The moon, having become the mind, entered the heart. The god of death, having become the outbreath, entered the navel. The god of waters, having become the seed, entered the generative organs.
So now we've talked with other times about the relationship between the tanmatras, the 5 elements, and perception. Set that aside. This has a different paradigm, talking about the most ancient Vedic gods: Agni, fire; Chandra, moon; Vayu, air. So here, the same principle, how these various devatas as metaphor become what it is in a human being, essentially dealing with these 10 sense organs, 5 organs of knowledge, information in, 5 organs of action, energy out. So let's parse it. So the first idea, please, Molly.
Yes. The fire, sorry, then fire, having turned into speech, entered the mouth.
So we think of fire usually with sight, but he's going to change it. So here, fire enters the mouth and becomes speech. So it's not only what we eat, mouth, but here, vach, speech. That's very interesting. I think it was a couple weeks ago, we were looking at the Sanskrit word mantra. What is a mantra? It's something you say, it's words, shabda. You can do them with your mind, or they can come out of your mouth and chant them. So the first part of the word man comes from manas, meaning mind. Tra means to go forth. We get the English words like traffic, transportation, transaction, tra, to go forth. So what is it that sends the mind forth? Speech. I can tell you what I'm thinking and feeling. I can tell you ideas. So here the first Agni enters the mouth and becomes Vach, speech. Next one.
The next one is air having become scent entered the nostrils.
Yes. Vayu, the god Vayu, the god of the winds, god of the air, becomes the breath, enters the nostrils. Now, we use this word Vayu in another context. So we've talked about the prana, the vital energy that enlivens the body. And we study pranayama, how to control the vital energy. What's the major element we use to control the vital force?
Breath.
The breath.
Breath. And these are then subdivided into the Panchavayu, the 5 subtle airs. So we have prana, the inhalation, we have apana, exhalation, we have samana, which is the digestion that sends food throughout the body. We have dhyana, circulation of the blood and the energy through the nadis. And then we have udana, which governs thinking. But here, what he says, vayu, air enters the nostrils, and we can breathe. Next idea.
The sun having become the sun. Oh, that's we finished that, right? Yeah. The quarters having become the hearing enter the ears.
So quarters, north, south, east, west, up and down, in front and back, meaning space, become the ears because sound is perceived in space. Hear things in space. So this becomes hearing. Next idea.
The deities of the herbs and the trees having become hair.
So the herbs and the trees which grow out of the earth. Here he's saying this is what causes the hair to grow out of our skin, out of our head, in other places like the palms. Next idea.
The moon having become the mind entered the heart.
So Chandra here, the moon, ancient was what they thought would rule the mind, the deity that rules the mind, enters the heart. Now we don't mean the physical heart. The ancients did not understand thinking was in the brain, feeling was in the brain. what they would do would go by physical sensations. We actually have it in our modern day English language. Oh, did you hear she left so and so? She broke his heart. We have that expression. You know, when you're going to send an emoji, is that what they call them?
Yeah.
That you care for someone, what do you send them?
Hearts.
Little hearts. Yeah. So this is the seat of the mind, the seat of affection, seat of emotion, the heart. And you get a lump in your chest sometimes when you've got strong emotion. From the standpoint of the Hatha Yoga tradition, all these nadis connect to the Anahata Chakra, the heart chakra. So there is some sense of a reality to it. But no, the mind is not really located in your heart. Mind is nowhere. Next idea.
The god of death, having become the outbreath, entered the navel.
So the navel is where the silver cord, we call that in the Western world. What is it that connects the subtle body to the gross body? So those of us who may have the subtle sense of sight, in the West we call it clairvoyance. If you're at the deathbed of someone, you'll see the physical body maybe going through its extremis, its distress, but frequently you'll see like the shimmering above it, the subtle body. It's begun to leave. It's still connected by the silver cord into the navel. And then when all the prarabdha karma is spent, it goes. And it's just amazing. You look at a dying person, and it's so clear there's something still there. And 15 minutes later, you look at the dead body, and it's so different. It's inert, like clay. Any of you been at deathbeds? You seen the same kind of thing?
Yes.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Death is not a tragedy. Being dead doesn't hurt. It's part of the cycle of life, especially in the West. People are so frightened of it. They avoid it. You go to the mortuary and they take the dead relative and, oh, there's grandma. She looks like she's sleeping so peacefully. We try to deny the fact of what's happened. That cord through the navel chakra severed. The subtle body, the Sukma Sharira, has gone on to its loka, where it's going to go. Next idea.
The god of waters, having become the seed, entered the generative organs.
So it's not just the seed, it's also the moisture in a woman's genital organs. So the liquid semen and the lubrication, then this, when people do the mufti, this is how babies come. But this is the waters that become the generative organs. This amazing thing, how through this act of the deepest intimacy. A human being, a whole nother entity is created. Just the great miracle of life. Next idea,
That is the end of it.
the end of it. All beautiful language of poetry. So to sum up, according to the Vedas, the acme of evolution is becoming a human being. Now, in Shankara's Viveka Chudamani, in the early part, having a human birth is a rare thing. Having a human birth, having the warrior spirit, meaning courage, not being a wuss, is indeed rarer. Rarer still is the opportunity to be exposed to the Sanatana Dharma, the truth teaching. Vedanta is not the only one. There are many, many truth teachings. Even rarer to come in contact with a woman or a man of knowledge who can shepherd us through this journey. Rarer still is steadfastness of heart, so that we don't crap out and give up. Shankara says this is the result of 100 crores of lives lived intelligently. How much is a crore? 100,000?
I think it's two more zeros. So I think it's 100 million. A crore, yeah.
100 million. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, lots of lifetimes. That's the point. So you have a human body. You do have the warrior spirit. You're willing to face all those afflictions, those defilements in your psyche. That's why we need courage. You've been exposed to a truth teaching. We have the opportunity by Swamiji's grace to study this. Don't waste it. All right, next mantra.
Okay, another long one. Tam ashanaya pipase abhrutam avabhyam abhiprajanahiti te abravid etashveva vam devatas shwabhajami etasu bhaginyau karomiti tasmat yasyai kasyaicha devatayai havir gritaye bhaginya vashyam ashanaya pipase bhavatha iti prathamhodhyaye dvitiya kanda. Hunger and thirst said to him, "For both of us also find out an abode." He told them, "I assign to both of you a place along with these gods and make you both share with them." Therefore, to whatever devatas oblation is made, hunger and thirst also become partakers of it.
So, on one level, it means life feeds on life. Even if you're a vegan, the grains and the fruits and the vegetables sacrifice their lives so that you and I can live. Doesn't mean just like somebody killing an animal to eat it. Life feeds on life. That's the eternal cycle of life. When you die, you become food for worms. So this idea of hunger and thirst in the outer is all part of the cycle of life. But the deeper meaning, as we've talked about hunger and thirst being metaphor for kama, craving, Krishna, thirsting, spriha, longing. Here we have a human being with 10 sense organs, with a mind, with an intellect. And now we just don't sit around. Desire has entered us. We use these 10 senses to fulfill our desires and to garner experience. Craving, I'll be happy when, it'll be better if, more better different, not that than this, resides in our bosom along with the sense organs, the devatas. This is a human being. Do what we do. From the moment we wake up in the morning to the moment our head hits the pillow at night, we are only engaged in one activity: finding the good by my highest understanding of the good and avoiding misery. This thing called a human being, this Purusha, with its 10 sense organs, driven through the world. Where is happiness? Where do I find peace? How do I accomplish my goals? How do I fulfill my ambitions? How do I get what I want? How do I avoid unhappiness, suffering, misery? It's all we do. Now, don't believe me. Look at a day in your life. What do you do that's contrary to that principle? That activity in the human mind is as much a part of who and what we are as, for example, phototropism in some plants where their leaves turn towards the light. They just do it. As a river flows downhill towards a lake or the ocean. Can't help it. That's what it does. It's our nature. The only real question in the end is, where is the good?
And the bad, right? Bad.
Exactly. Good
Yeah.
point. Good point.
Yeah.
The bad is the extroversion of the mind.
Yeah.
The good is the mind coming home. It just takes us many, many lifetimes to learn. So we talk about what is the swabhava, the essence, the swadharma, the nature of a human being. And the scriptures say it is God consciousness. That has two meanings. The first is, how do you know you are you? You do not see, hear, taste, touch, smell, or think yourself. Yet you are you and you know you are you. You are self-evident, Swayambhu, self-luminous, Swayam Jyoti. It's my nature, it's my swabha. But on another level, what is this thing called a human being doing? Coming home to God. It is absolutely our nature. I like to say Vedanta is the most compassionate of all religions. Nobody's dead. Nobody falls off. Everybody makes it. Everyone is saved. May not look like it, but in another life, as a response to suffering and happiness. What is the human mind doing? Avoiding misery, looking for the good. That's all we ever do. And even if I'm extroverted into the world, drugs, sex, and rock and roll, that's my God. And what am I going to find out? It didn't work very well or for very long. Let me try money, property, and prestige. Okay. Well, it worked for a moment, but it didn't work for very long. Maybe I'll try being a renunciate. And all I think about is the money I don't have. Where is the good? Maybe there isn't any. No, there is. But what we're looking for, we're looking with. Okay, we'll stop here. What verse are we on for next week? What's the
Section
next
3.
one?
It's section 3 is the next.
We'll start on section 3 next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Namaha. Hari Om.